answer the questions in the language that they are posed. I want to stress that in connection with the situation that is being formed now in Crimea, I corroborate that Crimea is and will remain a Ukrainian land. We will seize Crimea to nobody, and we will do everything possible so that it remains the territory of Ukraine and the borders of Ukraine are inviolable. I repeat once again what we have corroborated on the level of our government, that our main task and our position in this issue is the peaceful settlement of this conflict. We cannot allow any deaths in Ukraine. We have already suffered too many losses, so we will apply every effort in order to solve this issue in diplomatic way. I want to confirm that the front of support of Ukraine is broadening at the international level. Apart from the countries that have stated their support for Ukraine, both in the struggle against aggression and in conducting reforms in Ukraine, and those who supported territorial integrity of Ukraine, so this is broadening, and members of international organizations are joining in. This week, I personally had a chance to take part in preliminary negotiations with the ministers of foreign affairs of the European Union, the State Secretary of the United States in Paris, with the aim of looking for ways of settling this crisis, of this situation, of this conflict. I think that we have certain small progress and some hope that we will manage to do this in a peaceful way. We are talking about the issue of the setting up a contact group that will involve representatives, first of all, of the countries that initiated the creation of this group, and also of Ukraine and Russia. We do not still talk about the way it will function or the details about who joins it, but still we have an understanding that we need to create some negotiation mechanism and some negotiation grounds. With this idea, we have come back home, I to Kiev and Minister Lavrov to Moscow, and we hope that after the discussion of these proposals, we will be able to continue these negotiations about possible ways of work of this contact group. However, this is a very volatile situation. We have very many questions about this. Still, this is better than nothing at all, than no dialogue at all. I want to tell you that Ukraine is ready to consider different options of participation in this contact group, and I come back to our priority, the settlement of this conflict with diplomatic means. Apart from this, we are also considering an opportunity of creating other channels between Ukraine and Russia that would be instrumental in talking about the issue of the Crimea and the issue of the settlement of this situation and of stopping the aggression and de-escalating this situation. These could be different options. For instance, representatives of Verkhovna Rada, the parliament, public figures, different church leaders, cultural figures. However, we want to find any opportunity not to stop the dialogue between Ukraine and Russia, and so that it leads to specific concrete results. As you know, the government holds its position that we are ready at any level to conduct negotiations with our Russian colleagues. I want to once again draw your attention to the referendum that is planned for the 16th of March in the Crimea. I want to emphasize that it is illegal and it will lead to no legal results, both for the Crimea and Ukraine, and I hope for the international community as well. We also address Russia with a request at this stage not to block the decisions on the level of international organization, first of all OSCE and UN, where not to block the decisions that pertain to the sending of international observers to the Crimea, and we are ready to provide all support and help to those missions, and we are ready to provide them with any information that relates to the situation in Ukraine and Crimea. Thank you. Bogdana Kostyuk, Radio Liberty. Last year, when Ukraine was chairman of the OSCE, well, EU, yes, you worked on the so-called frozen conflicts in Transnistria and Abkhazia. What is the difference between the situation in Crimea and this scenario in Crimea from what's been happening in Transnistria almost 20 years ago and in Abkhazia since 1998? Second question is how to protect Ukrainian citizens and Ukrainian troops in the Crimea. About this scenario, the scenario is almost the same. However, the reaction is different. In southern Ossetia and Abkhazia, the adoption of the document that stopped the aggression, the so-called document of 5 points, was agreed when there were already casualties and the tanks were near Tbilisi. We are now talking about the contact group in order not to allow this aggression. This is point one. Point two is that knowing this experience, we are calling not to go on not to react to provocations of the Russian side, because it is very important for us to hold our calm. And the third thing, which is most important, is that even at this stage we have a very and firm support of the international community and key players on the international stage, which was not there in 2008. As far as the protection of Ukrainian soldiers in the Crimea is concerned, as I have already said, we are calling them to preserve their calm and not to react to provocations, and we are proud that we have such an army, that we have such navy, and that we have such soldiers, our Marines and seamen, who have something that cannot be overcome with arms, with weapons. This is dignity, honor, and their belief in our victory. So all the world applauds them for this. I think that this spirit of our armed forces is the main weapon that we will use to overcome the aggression. Please introduce yourself. Volodymyr Verbyany, Bloomberg. You mentioned the contact group. Can you tell us about your understanding of its work? And please, some details about who joins the contact group. As I told you, this is just a small step forward in the settlement of this conflict. I cannot tell you at this stage anything about the format of the membership, the tasks of this contact group. This is still on the stage of agreeing, not even the members of the contact group, but the major participants, Ukraine and Russia. So I think that this is very fragile issue, and that's why I think that until we agree everything, it is too early to speak about the work of this contact group. However, I repeat that we are ready to take part in its work.
Yes.
Aside from expressing, protesting words against the referendum in Crimea, practically, what options do you have for stopping it from going ahead, or and what strategy do you have if the referendum results in a vote for secession?
Well, this, as I told, we consider this referendum and the decision illegal, and there is no other way how to protest but to say to the international community that the results will be not valid, and it's a part of the democratic principles. If the elections or referendum at this moment is not fair, free and fair, then not only Ukraine but the international community will not recognize it. And but nevertheless, we insist on international observers to be there. However, there is no decision in the OSCE on the level of the international institutions, other international institutions, who could monitor what is going on in the Crimea. And the reason there is no decision, because Russia is blocking the discussions.
First row.
Minister Nasser, from unconfirmed reports of Ukrainian citizens being threatened and intimidated in the Crimea. Number one, what's the situation in there? Obviously, I'm talking about Ukrainians who oppose what you describe as Russian aggression. And number two, what are you doing to protect those?
First of all, I would rely on confirmed information and confirmed report. But what we are doing, we are providing different type of assistance and suggestions to those with whom we keep contact.
Like what?
Like, for example, the representative office of the foreign ministry in Simferopol.
Steve.
Mr. Foreign Minister, Stephen Erlanger from the New York Times. Two questions, really. One is, I don't quite understand the logic. If you think the Crimean referendum is illegal under the Ukrainian constitution, why do you want election observers there?
Well, I'm not saying about the election observers. I wanted to say towards the international observers. Not necessary for the referendum. We wanted to have the international observers in the Crimea.
Okay, but now the question I want to ask.
To be more precise from the legal point of view, we didn't request to send the international observers for this referendum.
Right.
So we did request to send international observers for the elections on the 25th of May, but not for this.
That's clear. I want to bring you back to an old speech by George Bush, which we joked about the Chicken Kiev speech, in which he warned in '91 that Ukraine should remember its neighborhood Do you think the new government is not sufficiently aware of its neighborhood? And how do you understand Mr. Putin's reaction? Is it strategic? Is it psychological? How do you answer the concerns of a Moscow that you are turning away from an old relationship that's been very close?
We perfectly understand that in Ukrainian government, I think Ukrainian people also perfectly understand that the good neighborhood relations is the key for the security in the region. And we would like to keep such a good neighborhood relations with all our neighbors, including Russia. That's the reason why we still keep an option for the diplomatic dialogue with Russia, and option of direct contacts between the leadership of Ukraine and Russia. And we also keep an option of developing good relations with Russian people in the future, because we understand whatever happened, we will live together. Geographically, we will live together, and we will have to develop these relations in the future. And some of the explanations, some of the arguments, Russian arguments, the Russian leadership, for me it's difficult to understand from the logical point of view. But it's up to them what to say. We do accept, being a democratic society, all possible answers. But if some of them are not logical, that's the reason why we want to keep a direct dialogue, to clarify what Mr. Putin or Mr. Pavlov has in mind.
Question back, please.
Yeah. Britta Hilpert, ZDF German Television. Minister, are you hoping that the contact group will be established before or after the 16th of March? And do you consider yourself, I mean, the new Ukrainian government, more a hostage of this situation or a player in this situation?
First of all, it's difficult for me to say about the dates, the timing. We think that this contact group has to be established as soon as possible. And we are ready to be part of this group as a full-fledged member of the group. And it might be also an answer for your second question. We are not a hostage, we are a player. Because we participate in consultation, in establishing of such a group. I'm not sure. I think we have some. We will not we will talk about this when the group will be formed, let's say.
Okay, we have a question here.
I'm trying to be very cautious because it's very tangible progress, and I wanna to have some results. Not only me. I think the international community wanted to have at least some positive signal. So let's talk about the details afterwards.
Так, агентство France Press. Пане міністре, поясніть, будь ласка, на чому
Please explain what is your hope based on, the hope that Russia could participate in the contact group. Yesterday, press secretary of Putin said it's just ridiculous to talk about negotiations after the agreement of February 21 wasn't executed. What reasons do you have to say that? I believe that if maybe they do not hear us the Ukrainian government, I mean the Russian colleagues, if they do not really listen to us, then unfortunately, not in the direct dialogue, but via media, we'll be able to relay our conviction that such a group should be created. And I believe that the states which are partners of Russia will be able to convince them that the dialogue is needed. And we are working with these countries. We are giving them our arguments, which they have to then relate to the Russian colleagues. And I believe that such signals to Russian colleagues have been transmitted. And I hope that the reason and the belief in the future will win. Global.
Then there will be another question on the right side. Thanks.
Just two quick questions. One, have you had any response from the Russians at all? And secondly, what will you do with your troops once this referendum is finished and the results go as everyone expects?
Regarding the response, the Russians are supposed to respond not to us, but to the group of the foreign ministers who initiated the contact group. So we are waiting for their response, for the information from this contact group. Regarding the troops, it has to be discussed and agreed on the governmental level. So at this moment, on my level, I couldn't say about this.
A question from BBC, please. Hi.
Yeah.
You said there had been some small steps, some progress had been made, but in English you didn't clarify what that had been, and you did say that Russia wasn't prepared to sit down at the table with you at the moment. So can you explain to us what exactly the progress has been, why you have some reason for hope? And secondly, we heard from Gazprom that they're talking about cutting the supply to Ukraine. Do you see that as retaliation for international sanctions against Russia? And what are you planning to do about it?
I think there is a sign for hope, and why I'm saying this, we did not sit together with Russians, but we were able to pass our messages through the mediators. It was not the Russian position was not categorical. So they do accept this proposal. They are thinking. So that's why there is a hope.
What are these proposals?
As I said, it's too early to say, because for us, and not only from Ukraine, but for the world community, it's better to have this contact group than to reveal information and kill it before it will be established. Let us be cautious all and have this group in force, if it's the only way to solve the conflict. Regarding the gas supply, I wanted to use maybe not very diplomatic example, because all what happened in Ukraine is difficult to, especially during the revolution, 3 months of revolution, it's difficult to put in some patterns known for the or examples known from the previous revolutions. And there were a lot of creativity as a response to the straightforward reaction of the regime. And in regard to the gas supply, I believe that Ukrainian people will be able to overcome this cutting of gas supply to Ukraine with other sources. But it's happened here on Maidan, when there was no, everyone was thinking, okay, it's danger, it's a tragedy. There is no food supply or no water supply in Maidan, in 5 minutes or in an hour, people all around Kyiv brought food supply to the Maidan. Or there was a decision to block the underground on December 11th. No problem. There is a taxi. Taxi driver took people from around Kyiv and brought to Maidan. And if Russia cut gas supply, we will probably look for other sources, wood, or simply we can stay without heat because there is spring on the ground, on the streets. So we are very optimistic, and I think what's very, very promising here is that we are now using the creativity of young Ukrainian generation, which is a strong weapon against old Soviet-style pattern, which is used by Russians. Thank you very much.
Дмитрий Анатольевич, телекомпания «Мир».
Company Mir. Recently, your Lithuanian colleague talking to Catherine Ashton said that the snipers on Maidan have something to do with the new government. I would like to request you, please go to my Estonian colleague and ask this question to him. One more question. Дякуємо час. Питання в тому, що потрібно